Brad Parscale.
We switched.
Hi,
okay?
everybody. We've got a great crowd here.
I
I can't imagine a more perfect day to have this conversation than today, the one-year anniversary of President Donald Trump's election in November of last year. It's been quite a year, I think we can all say. We don't have that much time, so let's just dive right into it. If you guys don't know, these two are really sort of the power, probably, behind the campaign. They're not on TV a lot, but these guys really helped propel the president to where he is now. So to start, Katie, 3 things that caused the president to become the president. What were they?
Well, first of all, I'd say the president. He has a unique message and energy that I think even before he was a politician, people would tell you that there was a presence that the now President Trump commands as it relates to anything he takes part in. And so whether it be real estate, whether it be marketing, whether it be brand management. So first and foremost, it's that. Secondly, he understood where the electorate was. He had a real understanding of what Americans were frustrated about, what they wanted to see out of their government. And the third thing, which is not something that I think people talk about a lot, but I think the third thing that caused the president to win was Barack Obama. I think we saw the most polarizing president I would argue, in a couple generations in Barack Obama. He took the country incredibly to the left, and I think gave a big opportunity for President Trump to come in with his pro-growth, pro-trade, pro-kind of economic populism message and get to a place where people wanted to say, I want to get back here.
And Brad, you have worked incredibly closely with the president. We're one of the few people with actually access to his social media, which we all know he uses a lot of. What is he like in private that we don't know about in public? What's the difference?
I actually love Trump as even the kind of hanging out with guy. He's actually very engaging. He cares about things that are going on. I mean, he really cares about this country, and it was amazing to be along with him and see how much he was giving up in his own life, to try to serve for the American people. And I don't think people understand sometimes. I mean, he was living pretty nice. A lot of people would not complain with that lifestyle, and he sacrificed all of it to sit in a plane and eat McDonald's and really just sit there and talk to the people of the country. And I respect that. I mean, very few people would give up all those things, to sacrifice it all, including having a good portion of the country be polarized by you, in which he was a pretty popular person. And I respect that tremendously about him.
White House is still a pretty nice place to live.
It is.
Brad, was there a moment during the campaign that you thought this could work? We could win?
Yeah, I mean, that was an up and down situation. There were moments early on, I'm like, ooh, we're going to sail. And then, there's moments you're like, we got to dig ourselves back out. I think about 10 days out, give or take a day. I don't want anybody to give that perfect math. I started to see, as the early voting came in, as the messaging was occurring, like you could see we had a really mathematical chance to win. And within a few more days, it became pretty obvious. I believe that Mr. Trump was going to be the next president. And
Katie, I have to ask, the president's Twitter, and as candidate, were there ever times that you thought you just wished he didn't tweet or didn't tweet the way he did?
I think at any time you're trying to run a campaign as an operative and as a political staffer, you think to yourself, oh goodness, if I had been the candidate, I wouldn't have done that. But it was hard to argue with the president's success in engaging with the electorate. And so from our perspective, it was a situation where he was getting attention of the American electorate in a way candidates don't normally do. And it caused increased fundraising, it caused increased engagement. And so while it didn't look like a normal campaign and it didn't have a message of the day, if you will, and the president was really his own communications director and his own spokesman, but it really allowed the American public to connect with him in a way that I think candidates hadn't in the past, and that worked for us.
And Brad, I don't know if people realize we mentioned it, but can you tell us what control you had over the social media, kind of in a short? I know that we could do a PhD. We could do a PhD dissertation about what you did with social media, not only Facebook but Twitter and beyond. Can you kind of give the audience just like what you did and how it worked?
So Mr. Trump, first of all, was in control of his social media. I think that's pretty obvious by now. However, his focus was on Twitter. When I came into the campaign, I tried to bring a very large emphasis into Facebook and its ability to reach a larger reach than Twitter. You can look at a lot of indicators to clearly see the difference between Facebook and Twitter's mass scale of who it can contact. There's also other things, Instagram, Snapchat, Google, YouTube. It was about finding the right audience and where those were. And what we found with Facebook was, here's a lot of donors. There was other things in GOTV and getting people to show up, working with the Republican National Committee, that for the first time, I believe, I wasn't there for the cycle before that Katie was, but a lot of these voters now that hadn't normally been online, in rural Ohio or Pennsylvania or a blue collar worker in Michigan is now online looking at photos of relatives and doing things, and they're accessible now. And we all see employees at work now holding their phones a lot, looking through social media during breaks. Those opportunities now showed up, and I think what we did is kind of encapsulate Trump's voice as megaphone, wrap around that, and try to suck up all that other air and space so that we could raise the money and get the people to show up to vote for him.
Now, this is for both of you. There was some criticism of the social media use of the campaign and of the campaign officials. I know that this has been talked about a little bit now at Web Summit about retweeting accounts or anything like that. What advice did you guys give to the campaign or to the campaign officials about social media, about how to approach things like that? Because social media is obviously the Wild West. You don't always know where things are, what they're coming from. What did you tell them?
Well, I think that what advice did we give? I don't know if that was, I wasn't sitting there going, hey, don't do this or don't do that. I think that there's rules that were put in place, by the lawyers and things like that. There are things, we can't put up and things we do. But for the most part, we stuck with Mr. Trump's message. We didn't really have to skew far off that. People all think that we did something that was trickery and we did these things. Mr. Trump's message resonate. Half of America or 40% of America, whatever, just doesn't agree with that, so they believe it's trickery. And the majority of people in the states to win 270, which set by our Constitution, decided that was the message to resonate with them. People don't want to believe that that's true, and so they think that. But most of our messaging was probably the most on-message stuff I've seen in politics. Trump would say it, we would make that message. And it's funny, they just want to make it out to be something more. They don't want to believe that America had, that Trump was going to bring other change and bring real change. And I think that they still can't get over it. You would think a year now they would get there, a little bit of acceptance, but there's still that question.
So it has been a year. The president has not been in office technically for a year, but it's been 9 months or so, right? What's your assessment of the first 9 months, Katie? How the goals that have been reached? Obamacare hasn't been fully repealed yet. We're working on tax reform now. What's your take?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that as you said, we're not even 365 days into the administration. And it takes most administrations at least until the first midterm to pass major legislation. And so I don't think we should say because we haven't passed major legislation that the administration hasn't been a success. The deregulation that's been stripped away has been hugely helpful to business. The third quarter forecast for the United States GDP has just been released, I think, a week or 10 days ago. It'll be the third quarter in a row. We'll have 3% increase in GDP. That's the best forecast we've had in 7 years. We haven't had that. And so from an economic standpoint, from a deregulation and trying to free up people to do business in the United States, I think what you see in this tax reform bill, we're trying to repatriate a lot of money. You're seeing companies come back to the United States for the first time in a long time because the president's talking really aggressively about lowering the corporate tax rate in the United States, which is the highest among the 35 largest economic countries in the world. So I think you're seeing a situation where everything that the president ran on, whether that be tax reform, whether that be repeal or replace getting through the House, I think you'll still see that conversation after we get tax reform done come back up. But I think you'll see that the president's going to continue to talk about and get done what he's been doing. And I think he's had some real success.
Are you concerned about, we always see these approval rating polls, are you at all concerned about those ratings right now?
No, I'll tell you. I mean, I'm not someone that lives or dies by polls per se. Brad and I used at the Republican National Committee what we would call voter analytics as well as polling. And if you look back, and we actually just did this, I think, last week, and you look at the target states across the country, the president's approval in those target states either matches or is above with the Republican base where it was on Election Day last year. And so I think Brad mentioned this. I mean, you're always going to have 40% of the American public that doesn't agree with the president. And so what you're talking about is 10% of voters that swing one way or the other. And I think once we get tax reform done, I think you'll see that 10% swing back towards the president.
And Brad, you know through social media the president's voters pretty well. What do you feel like has resonated with them in the past year that has really been what you've seen it kind of exploding for them that they're really excited about?
Well, I think President Trump continues to talk about the growth of the economy, jobs. I mean, Katie said this a lot, and one of the things she educated me when I first met her was people go and vote because they want a job, they want a paycheck, they want to take care of their family. You know, there's a lot of other issues they get online they talk about, but when they get in that voter booth and they look at that, a lot of people, a majority, click that button because who is going to provide me with the best life so I can take care of my family? Right. And I think President Trump has gotten up there every day and said, I want to make that better for you. A lot of other noise is all around all those other things, which is, makes Twitter a more interesting, entertainment while your lunch break. But the truth is, when people get up again in 4 years and they have to click that button again, are they providing more? Do they have more in their pocket? And do they think the next 4 years to take care of their family and put them through college is going to be better? And I think you're going to see the same thing again. There's a lot of noise in between then, but the truth is, people vote that way.
So last night there was an election in the United States for a certain number of seats, and Democrats notched a couple wins, including in Virginia. Does that signal something to either one of you? Does it give you a lesson of what the Republicans need to pay attention to in 2020? What do you say to that, Katie?
So, I mean, I tend to think that it's important to embrace the president as we go into these midterm elections. You'll see there were 4 special elections in the United States, specifically for members of Congress to replace members that the president put into his administration. And all 4 of those special elections were won by Republicans. And they weren't all in districts where the president had a landslide victory a year ago. So, for example, Georgia 6, Karen Handel, that was a district the president won by 1 percentage point. Karen won that district by 5 percentage points. And Karen embraced the president. So what you see there is there would be some people that would tell you, hey, Karen, when you're running, be careful. The president barely won this district. You shouldn't embrace the president. Karen said, that's not what we're going to do. We're going to embrace the president because there's a huge block of Republican-based voters. And even, as Brad and I found out, low propensity Republicans that are really frustrated with Congress and really frustrated with what's going on in Washington that want change. And they may not love everything the president says, but they love what he wants to do in terms of shaking things up and changing things because they feel like the Washington has not been working for them. Their taxes have gone up, their premiums on their health care have gone up, their kids have more student loan debt than they've had in generations. And so I think it's really important as we look into 2018, the candidates across the country embrace the president because he's still very popular among the Republican base.
Brad, I know you say multiple times you are the plumber. You're not the person who puts the stuff into the pipes.
Yeah.
But what do you think the president needs to do in the coming months, in the coming years, to keep his base and then beyond his base, the rest of the country on his side?
I keep saying it. Keep tweeting.
Keep tweeting.
Keep tweeting. Tell people what you're thinking. Tell people what you want to do. Talk to them. I don't know. For me, I was not in politics before this. A lot of people in this country probably don't know it for sure. This was the first ever political campaign I ever worked on in my life. I went straight to the presidency. Not common in America. A little bit of dumb luck and the president hired me. He'd never been in politics either. So I think he felt safe with me, I guess. But I always say, I see it refreshing that he talks to me. At least I know what he's thinking. I know how he's feeling. Where does he want to go? And I don't have to, and nothing against CNN, but I don't have to have CNN's version of it. I'd like the president's version. If CNN wants to give their commentary and Fox wants to give their commentary, great. But at least I see the source. And I tend to be a person that when I was educated said, make my own decision, listen to others, and don't be scared to understand everybody. And I think that that is the way the country should be, and I hope both sides do that. They always talk and be open.
Katie, put us in the position of sort of the opposition research. Who are the Democratic candidates that you are most concerned about?
I'll be honest, there aren't a ton. I mean, I think we were looking at this 2 years ago.
We're going to let them win a couple.
Well, in terms of running against the president in 2020, I mean, you know, I think it's interesting. If you look at the median age of a Democrat in Congress right now, it's 72. If you look at the median age of a Republican in Congress right now, it's 51. So what you're seeing is I mean, Nancy Pelosi's still in power, Harry Reid's still in power. You're not seeing a deep bench of young Democrats coming up that look like Barack Obama, that are really inspiring the Democratic base. What I have found normally is that people don't really like to go out to vote against something. They want to go out and vote for something.
Right.
And I think we saw that no for a lot with the re-election of President Bush, right? There was a lot of anger at President Bush, but no one could get excited about John Kerry. It just didn't happen. And so
none of the other candidates had a chance anyways. It was rigged.
But I think the really important thing to think about there is that they are not electing young, dynamic, change candidates. And I think you're seeing a fight among the Democratic base in the party saying, are we going enough to the left? And you'll continue to see kind of the Hillary establishment Democrat versus the Bernie liberal Democrat in these primaries, which is what Republicans dealt with really in the 2010 cycle. And so it's a really interesting thing to watch because I'm kind of looking at it saying, well, you know, welcome to the party. This is what we've been doing for 6 years now.
So we just have about a minute and a half left, but I think a lot of people, the news swirling around the president every day, there's so much of it, the perception can sometimes be a little negative. And what is something that you want people to know about the president and what he does to some people who might be wary or scared of him in some way? Brad?
I get this question a lot, actually. He cares about people. He wants to see the country better. He is a guy who really believes this country gave him a dream. And that's the most powerful thing anyone can feel. And I think that he wants other people to feel that dream. And regardless if you agree with 100% when to do it, everyone should sleep good at night because he just wants the better for everyone.
What about you, Katie?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I've worked, you know, with the president now since, relatively closely since January. And I will tell you, I mean, he really cares. He has a very big heart. And I think sometimes the media, that doesn't always get through. And so I would encourage what Brad's saying.
It's hard in 140 characters.
It is hard in 140 characters.
280.
I know. Now you can really get down to business.
Yeah.
But I would say he has a very big heart, and he wants to see this country do well for his kids and his grandkids, which is what every American out there wants. And so he's there fighting every day for that.
Well, there's a lot more to go in this presidency, and every day is a new insane day in the United States of America. So I hope you all enjoyed the panel. Thank you for coming out here. Thank you to Brad and Katie for spending the time, and enjoy Web Summit.
Smallest couch ever. Oh.